Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Samuel, do you have an estimate as to how many people are actually going to be able to make it? I think there was at least one or two that said they couldn't make today.
Yes, I believe it was Marissa Gillett and one other person I believe might have been Marianne who couldn't make it, but everyone else I believe could.
Okay.
Eric Hammerling is coming on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I believe Marissa's coming on now.
Okay.
And then after Marissa, all we have left is Steven and Mariana.
Okay. Did Steve respond that he was going to be able to make it or no?
He never responded to me to tell me he wasn't going to make it.
Okay. No worries. We'll give it, I guess, another minute or so to see if anybody else comes on. My dog is checking in on me, apparently.
I will apologize in advance for any living thing that walks by my front door and the barking that will ensue. I will try to quickly mute whenever that happens. But we just got a new puppy, and now the two dogs together are going crazy every time someone comes by.
It's the joy and the curse of working from home. I have actually two little ones at home today because it's election day and they don't have school. So they can't seem to do anything without checking in with me first. So I apologize ahead of time if I get an interruption with that too. So
I'm here in Denver. I'm here in Denver, Colorado right now. Susan and I drove here over the last 2 days, driving 1,000 miles a day to get here with our van. And we brought our two dogs, plus our daughter has two dogs. So we had dogs here.
Wow, crazy.
Including a 6-week Shih Tzu. It's just the cutest thing. But she's sleeping now. We'll see if she makes any noise in a little while.
A few of my friends warned me that are similar age. They said, it's not like getting a puppy when you were younger. You're not going to remember it the right way. Now I've had the puppy. I'm like, oh, I see what they're saying. Yeah, maybe I don't have as much energy as I had when I got dogs before. They do require a lot.
I know they take their naps. You get your recess when they take their naps, right?
Yeah. And you were saying you're working with kids at home. I remember when my kids were little, I had a long hallway going to my office. And I wished, I don't know if any of you are familiar with that old show, Maxwell Smart, the spy guy. And he'd walk down the hallway and all these doors would close behind him. I thought, man, I need to install that in my house.
I remember that show. He's the one that always said, sorry about that.
You just saw my eldest come in, and of course you had to get a charger. So hopefully that'll be for a little while. But why don't we get started? I see Mariana and James DeSantos joined us. I'm not sure about Steve's already. I know that he's travels quite a bit.
He's coming on right now.
Oh, Steve is making it. Okay, good. I guess we'll wait one more second here. Hey, Steve. All right. I think we have everybody then, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
yep.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for taking the time to get together. I know that task forces can be kind of nebulous in terms of how we actually approach some of this stuff and whatnot. But I did think it would make sense for us to have a quick intro meeting, get to know one another a little bit, and set up some of the parameters as to how we're going to approach the task force, kind of hopefully what our objectives are, and then ideally get some logistics out of the way so that moving forward we actually don't have to constantly do polls as to when people can make it, because it's never an easy thing to do, as I have learned many times, including this time around. So first off, I just want to introduce myself. I think I've met some of you in this room, but not everybody. I'm Len Green. I'm Vice President of External Affairs for First Light Power. Our company, if you're not familiar with us, we are the largest owner of hydropower in the state of Connecticut. We have a number of facilities in Western Connecticut on the Housatonic River, some smaller facilities in Eastern Connecticut, and then a couple of really small ones up in Northern Connecticut in Colebrook and in Bantam. We also have a bunch of hydros in Massachusetts. We have solar. We're building offshore wind off of New York, and a lot of stuff in Canada as well. But obviously, our footprint in Connecticut with hydropower made us interested in this task force and why we got involved. But I thought it might make sense for us to just go around the room, introduce each other to one another, and give just a little bit of information about ourselves, just to get it out of the way here. So I don't know who wants to go first, or I might just call you out just because you're on my screen anyway. I might starting at the left here, Duncan, if you want to chime in.
Sure, very good. I'm Duncan Broach, and I think I sent everybody this study that I did, and let me know if you didn't get that. But anyway, I've been doing hydro and nothing but hydro for the past 40 years, mainly in Connecticut. When I graduated from college, my first job was from civil engineering degree that I got was to do feasibility studies on hydropower. And then from there, I went from one occupation to another to my own company, where I've licensed and developed and built and operated and maintained many hydro sites. So I've got a little bit of experience in that. So in amongst all that, back in the 1980s, we were able to get a PPUC docket pass that provided front-loaded contracts for these hydros, but those have pretty much all expired now. But anyway, with CSPPA, that's the Connecticut Small Power Producers Association, which I'm the chairman of, we've been in existence since the 1980s, and now more recently, we've been very active in trying every year to get some type of incentives going for small hydro. And I label it as small hydro because the small hydros have problems that are different than the larger first light type of projects. But you'll read about that in my study, and I look forward to doing this study with you folks and helping out in any way that I can to come up to a result that the legislature is looking for here.
Thank you, Duncan. Laura, you're next on my screen. Looks like you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I'm Laura Wildman. I'm the Vice President of Ecological Restoration at Save the Sound. I am a water resource engineer and a specialist in fish passage. Let's see, my hydro experience primarily relates to relicensing and settlement agreements associated with large-scale hydro up in Maine, and then some relicensings in this area as well.
Thank you. Mariana, you want to go?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Mariana Treef. I'm with the Connecticut Green Bank. And we are a quasi-state agency that promotes the deployment of clean energy through financing. In my role at the Green Bank and the investments team, which I've been in since 2015, so going on 8 years now, I've supported 3 separate small hydro projects, all run north of the river, all less than 1 megawatt, and have therefore sort of seen the challenges, but also the opportunities with small hydro and more on sort of the business financing side of things. So excited to be here.
Thank you. Eric, you want to go?
Sure. So I'm Eric Hammerling. I'm the Office Director of Environmental Review and Strategic Initiatives at DEEP. It's a new office located in the Commissioner's office, looking at SEPA reviews, FERC reviews, and cross-cutting issues that go across various bureaus. How we look at dams is one of those issues, because as you know, at DEEP, there are folks who think about dams and are thinking about either flood control or flow issues or fish passage or hydropower. And one of my roles is to try to pull some of those threads together and have a more coherent and cohesive approach to looking at hydropower and dam issues. I am familiar with Duncan Broach from back in the day. Before coming to DEEP, starting in June of this year, I was with the Connecticut Forest and Park Association for 15 years, and before that, with the Farmington River Watershed Association as their executive director, where I got to spend some time with Duncan looking at hydropower facility in the Collinsville area, and certainly connected to Laura and others with expertise there. So great to be a part of the group.
Thanks, Eric. Sam, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone?
Hello, everyone. My name is Samuel Clark. I'm the clerk of the Transportation Committee at the Legislation Office Building, but I'm also the standing interim clerk for the Energy Technology Committee. Hence why I've been emailing all of you, and I was able to gather all of you together today. So I will be the administrator for this task force until there is a more permanent person for this committee. More likely, I'm probably going to be the administrator for the entire run of this task force until February. So nice to meet you all. I look forward to working with you. And if you have any other questions or thoughts, just feel free to reach out to me.
Thanks, Sam. And thanks for getting this meeting put together. I appreciate it. Steve, why don't you hop in?
Sure. Thanks, Len. Good morning, everyone. Steve Zaretti with Brookfield Renewable. My role in New England is focused both on commercial origination as well as policy. Brookfield specifically doesn't have anything currently in Connecticut, but we do have a large fleet that operates in Massachusetts and Maine. We're very familiar with a lot of the opportunities and challenges related to continued operations for hydro facilities, both from a commercial perspective as well as from a regulatory and stakeholder perspective as well. So very nice to connect with you all.
Thanks, Steve. Commissioner?
Hi, everyone. My name is Marissa Gillette. I am the Commissioner of PURA, the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, and one of 3 commissioners. I'm the chair, and really happy to be here on the task force. Sorry I can't be on camera. I'm also home with 2 little ones today, and they're directly in the back. So I'm interested to hear what everyone is looking for from PURA. I didn't see you're going to be stuck with me today until I can figure out what staff would best serve you. So please don't hesitate to narrow in on what you're looking for PURA on this, and I can make sure that we have the appropriate resources. So looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And last but not least, James.
Good morning, everyone. How are you?
Good.
Good. I am probably the only one on this call, aside from Samuel, who was not appointed as a member of this task force. So I am here purely as a spectator. I am the legislative liaison for the Connecticut Green Bank. Here to listen to and support with Mariana, who did a great job of outlining our role so far in hydro and what we're looking for. To see what the recommendations are, just so I'm well briefed when the session comes up. And there are inevitably going to be legislative recommendations. I just want to kind of know the background on everything so we can help facilitate this through as quickly as possible. So that's where I'm coming from. So it's nice to meet everyone.
Thanks for joining us. And actually, on that note, I know we have everybody here. This is more of a question for Sam as to. I know we have potentially an additional appointee, or maybe more than that, outstanding. I don't know if it's actually going to be filled, but I found out kind of late in the process that I had been apparently nominated as chair or put in as chair because of the way the statute was written and having been nominated by the speaker. But I understand there's another chair potentially coming on board. But maybe Sam, you can give us an update as to what the status is of that.
Yes. So the other appointee needs to be appointed by the President Pro Temp, Senator Martin Looney. We're still working with his staff to get that appointment done. We're also just trying to get some recommendations for anyone who Senator Looney also might be able to appoint. Duncan, I believe you might have had some recommendations from the last time we spoke, or if anyone has any recommendations for his appointment, you can also reach out to Senator Needleman and his legislative aide Nick Spencer, and Senator Needleman can recommend that person to Senator Looney to appoint them. And then when they're appointed, then we can just then Len, you and I, or you can just fill them in with any information that they have.
Okay, so it's potentially imminent, but we're not quite sure as of now. So just wanted to make that clear. And there's no other outstanding, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's everybody if they fill that role.
After this one last appointment, we are all set with appointments.
Okay. Well, with the introductions out of the way, I think it made sense to me, and I know we didn't publish a specific agenda. Admittedly, I've never actually served on a task force before. I've been appointed to one, but it never met, so that was an easy one to deal with. But I thought it might make sense for us as a group to try to just start to hone in on some of the basics of this task force, what we're trying to actually accomplish, and it's a pretty broad statutory requirement, studying existing hydropower and the value and the benefits it brings. And I have my own questions, I think that may have to be brought back to through Sam to maybe OLR or others. But nevertheless, I did think it made sense for us to try to open up the floor a little bit, get a feel for what everybody's trying to actually get out of this task force and why we were interested in it. I'll start just with myself. I already mentioned, First Light has the largest portfolio of hydro in Connecticut of existing resources. So, we have a vested interest in trying to showcase the benefit of the existing resources and the fact that, we believe that they're going to continue to be benefit the state of Connecticut into the future. So obviously we want to make sure that, any study or any product that comes out of this committee or this task force actually exemplifies that and underscores that. But I know that others have other viewpoints as well. Some of you may actually be wondering, why the heck am I actually on this thing? It's possible too. Sometimes that happens. So happy to open it up for discussion. And there's only 9 of us, so I figured just speak out, I guess, unless we want to be more formal with hand raising and stuff. But I'm not a formal person, so. Yeah, Mariana.
I'll speak up. Thank you, Len, for chairing and for getting us kicked off. I'll admit it's my first task force too. Part of why I asked James to join me, to make sure I'm I'm not doing anything inappropriate. I think at least on my end, where I'm seeing and I'm hoping that we can get to with this task force is also with some recommendations on how we can support sort of the existing hydro that's possibly going to sort of come up for relicensing or that could come offline, and also sort of new hydro projects. And I can speak to sort of the barriers that I see in the projects that reach me in terms of sort of compensation, and sort of just brainstorm and come up with some recommendations around that.
That's helpful, Mariana. I do think that would be a valuable inclusion, if you will, particularly with the Green Banks resources and some of your focal points moving into the future. Anybody else? Go ahead, Duncan.
Right. So this has been a long and frustrating battle that Connecticut small power producers has been working on for many years of trying to get hydro recognized in Connecticut and trying to get the incentives in place that hydro needs and deserves. All the other New England states are way ahead of Connecticut in terms of recognizing and supporting hydro. Basically, in the other states, you can get with your hydro, you're paid basically the retail rate for your power. That's just a very generalization, but that's the fact. And in Connecticut, there's nothing there basically. Sure, there's the green bank for new projects maybe, but for those existing ones out there, they're having major problems and they're unfortunately being shut down. And that's a shame. I mean, that's an embarrassing shame of our state to have a beautiful hydro project shut down when it could be generating renewable power. So what's going on? These projects, there's existing projects, and then there's projects that have been decommissioned, and then there's projects that could be built at existing dams. These are all existing dams that were built, usually back in the 1800s. It's not like solar or wind where you can just pop up a unit because, nobody's going to be building a dam now because there's too much involved with that. But these are existing dams and existing projects. So what I hope comes out of this is a recognizing hydro and its benefits, and coming up with equitable power purchase rates for these small projects so they can live. Right now, the only thing they can do is get the wholesale rate for their power. That's the ISO LNP that averages about 3 cents. And I'm telling you, you can't even pay your property tax at 3 cents. I personally own a little hydro that I rebuilt and put online in 1995. And that's what I get. I get 3 cents and I run it at a loss every year. Every year it's money, it's a red number at the bottom, and I'm putting money into this project. And why do I keep it running? Because I get a good feeling from it, and I feel that that's, good contribution. But there's other projects, and you'll see that in my study that have shut down. And if we were able to get good rates in place, maybe we could put them back online, and maybe we can save the ones that are going to be shut down soon if we don't do something soon. And also maybe we can put some more online where there are existing dams out there to build projects at. So that's what I hope happens and with this study.
Thank you, Duncan.
Yeah, Len, from Brookfield's perspective, as I mentioned, we don't have anything operating in Connecticut currently, so there's no Brookfield specific sort of outcome I think that we're after. I view my participation as one just more to be able to validate and support outcomes that would benefit the hydro industry in Connecticut. We operate in other states. We have a lot of experience in sort of the regulatory regimes and limitations and some of the commercial arrangements like Duncan was just describing. I think he's referencing sort of group net metering opportunities that exist in other states that are not available in Connecticut. So from my perspective, really not driving toward an outcome specifically other than, wanting to help be part of, good policy making to support the hydro industry generally. So.
Thanks, Steve. That makes sense. Anybody else? I know that. Go ahead, Eric.
So again, happy to be a part of this discussion, and have a lot of respect for operators like Duncan and First Light, and I think there are some potentials for win-wins for the environment, for renewable energy in this space. I do want to say just up front, and I've said this in a lot of different contexts, but sometimes your success is not based on what you say yes to, but sometimes what you say no to. And I'm just to put on the table at the very beginning, I think there are some awkward, if we're talking about some hydro projects that have either been decommissioned, bringing those back online, or some of And by the way, what Duncan provided was excellent and helpful information on the status of existing projects and potential projects. But I know that in that decommissioned coming back online area, that's likely going to be a difficult one for deep. And obviously all these things will be kind of run up the chain for me, but just to identify that as an area of, potential conflict. That said, I think it'd be really useful if we're able to, go into some of what was also raised in Duncan's paper on some of the, economic benefits potentially associated with hydropower. If there is the potential to look at relative benefits to other forms of renewable energy. Often there's a lot of information just within a certain renewable energy space, but not looking across various renewable energy spaces. And I think, if we can, raise some points there that would be helpful to a better understanding of hydropower in general, I'd be very interested in exploring that. And just, last thing is just a recognition of our, relatively short time frame to pull something together. So not wanting to put too much on the table, but, February of 2024 feels like it's just about here already. So I want to make sure we're mindful of that, obviously, as we go.
No, that's a great reminder. We have holidays coming up. I know for example, I'm planning on being out quite a bit at the end of the year, and that's going to make things much more challenging. But hopefully we can come up with some kind of a product that is useful anyway, or at least a few recommendations that may be helpful to the legislature as they move forward next year. And obviously the appointees here, we represent a bunch of different types of organizations and focal points. I think that's in my opinion is a good thing, because if it's just one perspective, it's not going to be all that helpful in my opinion. But Laura, looks like you came on.
Yeah, I did. First of all, I was, of course, waiting to hear more about this group, because I have gotten no updates on this group other than now setting this first meeting. So I was waiting to hear if we were given any direction of what our goals should be and what we're looking to produce. I obviously represent environmental interests, and therefore I represent impacts of hydro too, and kind of fly on the wall in that aspect. That being said, I think we can do things responsibly, and I have been involved in multiple dialogues with both sides of this issue. If we even want to call it both sides, I always think everything's kind of a sliding scale. I don't think there's two sides. And so I'm here to kind of find out, what we want to get done. I'm not sure what that is. I will say that once I saw a really, really helpful figure that was up in Massachusetts, and it was looking at small hydro and was kind of a chart that you could use to determine if it made sense to put hydro on a dam or not, economically, just based on the dollars and how things stand now. I know that was done for, I believe, either a state organization or a hydro organization. So it didn't go out to the public. So we never got to see anything like that. I wouldn't mind something like that in Connecticut. We often work on projects and are wondering, what's the potential and what's not. And it's very hard to say when you're just standing there next to a dam. So I would love to see some more information to be able to make those calculations quickly. And some of you are probably thinking, yeah, I can do that in my sleep. But those of us that don't typically assess them for hydro potential, don't have that information quickly available to us.
I will say too that, and I think, I can't remember who mentioned it, but I know, Laura, you've been involved in relicensings in the past, and relicensing is obviously a big issue for anybody in the hydro industry that deals with FERC. It's not always necessarily FERC dam that we're dealing with. Many of them are state regulated specifically, but that is an area that I think, from my perspective and from First Light's perspective, we are interested in identifying at least some of the challenges with that, and potentially, to Duncan's point, if there are, and maybe to your point too, Laura, if there are some opportunities for hydros to be installed on existing dams. And most dams, as I understand it, most dams are not viable for hydro. It would not make sense for most of them, but there are some that are. The siting and permitting challenges, I think, are something that are obviously very much in the forefront of what would be on our mind as a hydro company and a developer of other renewables. So I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because, frankly, as Eric pointed out, we only have, what is it, 3 months or whatever it is, 4 months. I don't think it's 4 months. So we have to get something quick. And I don't know if anybody wanted to add something to that, very basic discussion, but I think this is something that we could probably take away and maybe identify in a little more detail as to what we want to do moving forward. But it does kind of segues very nicely, in my opinion, to one of the questions that I have that Sam may or may not have an answer to, and that's what sort of resources do we have available to us? When it comes to a study, or we want to look at some additional information or find additional research that maybe not necessarily available to us in a direct sort of way. Does OLR support the task force? Do they not? What sort of internal resources do we have available to us?
I mean, like, if there's any specific questions that any of you have regarding the bill itself, I mean, or regarding any other legislation, that's where I guess I can reach out to OLR or LCO and see what they can do. But in regards to any research or anything regarding this task force, I am not entirely sure how much of the committee staff themselves can do in terms of that kind of aid.
Okay.
But if you had a question regarding any potential legislation, then I'm sure I can reach out to LC or OLR and see what they say and get back to you.
Okay, that would be helpful. Eric, I see you have your hand raised.
And on that point, and to what Laura had mentioned earlier, like the what are we doing here question. I looked at the special act, and as Len and others have said, it's very, very broad. I was going to plug it in the chat, but we don't have chat enabled. But it says, there's established a task force to study existing hydropower assets in the state and review the benefits of such assets. That's it. And everything else in the legislation is about appointments. So it really is a broad charge that way. And or maybe a narrow charge, depending on how we look at it. But obviously I'm glad, Len, you brought up this topic, because that's the first thing we need to figure out is where do we want to focus our efforts so that we can get down to it.
And I agree with you, Eric, and Laura as well. When I saw the statute, I was heartened as a hydro representative in the state, but also wondering what exactly we were going to do. So one of the things that did strike me is that it may make sense, and I don't know how. Again, I'm going to have to rely on you, Sam, to a degree, and I didn't realize you had two committees, so I apologize ahead of time if we're asking a lot, but it may make sense, and I think this is completely allowed, but to ask one or two of the chairs or co-chairs of the legislative committee to join us, at least for one meeting, to figure out what would be helpful to them. I can say that what we're interested in seeing, and I'm sure what Duncan's interested in seeing, we can certainly focus our attention on that. And Laura, I'm sure, and Eric, I mean, everybody has their own ideas, I'm sure, but if the legislature itself is not necessarily interested in doing some of that stuff, it's probably a good idea to talk about it ahead of time and see what would be most valuable for them from a legislative intent perspective. Is that possible, Sam?
I can reach out to the chairs and ask for that.
And
what happened in the last legislative session was that I met with Representative Tim Acker and Representative John Steinberg. I individually took each of them to a hydro site, and Acker actually twice. And after they came and we talked, they said, and I quote them, "Duncan, we're going to help you guys." how can you live off of 3 cents, and things like that. So things were going great. And each of them introduced a bill, each one of which provided hydro simply with a retail rate. All right, that's great. Similar to other New England states, we can really do a lot with that and put a lot online and keep a lot online, and maybe even put some of the better decommissioned ones online that are environmentally cooperative. But then overnight, both of those bills basically died. And, even though in the middle of it, Steinberg said, we're going to get this through, everybody. We're not just going to, leave it on the plate. We're going to get this thing through. But then I guess something happened where people were saying something, I don't know what, but then he said, and I quote him, he said, no, it's complicated. And then those bills died, and what came out is Buck B's bill that we're working on here now. So that's a little bit of background, maybe, on the fact that, hey, our legislative people did, recognize hydro. They did see that it needs some good rates to survive, and this is a renewable resource that needs supporting environmentally correctly, of course. So that's that background. I would stress that, for projects that are decommissioned or decommissioning, it's difficult if you're a project owner to provide environmental incentives or facilities if you don't have the budget for it. So how can a project put in a fish ladder and other facilities if it can't even pay its own bills because its cash flow is so bad? So then a project like that might say, I'm sorry, folks, but we just can't do it. And, they're decommissioned. It doesn't mean that that project couldn't do a lot better and install those facilities if it was paid equitable rates, for its energy. Okay.
Well, I think, and this is all helpful. I think in terms of, it sounds like there's not a lot of very official resources we have available to us specifically for, I guess I'll say a study of our own, which I'm not surprised at. Although I guess Sam's going to check in and see how much support we can get from the legislative research organizations. But beyond that, it may make sense for us, as I said, to try to talk to the legislative leaders themselves, and also try to potentially come up with a product that identifies the issues very specifically and in a more official way, rather than just simply testifying at committee. And that would lead to additional resources being dedicated to actually look into what can be done about some of these issues that Duncan's identified, some of the issues that Laura and Eric have spoken to as well, and try to get a better feel for that. And that may be what we end up with as a task force is, hey, we got to study this a little bit more, and you actually have to put some meat on the bones. But that's just my view. So I guess if the takeaway here is, go ahead, Eric.
Just wanted to say, I think it would be really useful information for us to understand what the retail rates are in other New England states, perhaps, and how they're determined as part of spelling out that picture. So I think that would be a good thing for us to identify and present as part of a report for sure. Mm-hmm. And Duncan, I think there are probably some dams that are going through decommissioning for different reasons, and yeah, it's hard to unpeel some of that, but I think but anyway, I just want to express an openness to really look at the economic picture of hydro.
Excellent. Okay. Well, obviously, we could probably. Oh, I'm sorry, James. Go ahead. I didn't see you there.
Yeah, hey Lynn, how you doing? I just wanted to say when I first read the bill too, I almost laughed a little bit because it was so vague. But I did pull the transcripts. The public hearing wasn't very helpful, but I pulled the transcripts from the public hearing in general, and then the House floor and the Senate floor to read through it, send it off to Mariana. So hopefully, Mariana, that was helpful. But I will say, being in And if it was helpful, I'm happy to send that around to everybody else on here as well. But I will say that during the committee meetings, and I'm glad Duncan brought him up, but Buckby was very loud in his opinions on where this should be, right? So if you're going to be bringing in the chairs, I would just make the recommendation that you also bring in the ranking members as well, and just have them there, because if you omit Buckby, I'm not sure where everything's going to go. That's all.
Understood. Well,
Yep.
that's helpful. And you're right. I do know Bill, and I know he was adamant about certain things with trying to do something for the industry. So maybe Sam, if you can just include the ranking members in that invite as well, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I don't want to move off this topic. I know we scheduled an hour. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And there's not I mean, I guess we could talk about this round and round, but without any real direction as of right now, or kind of a plan. I think it makes sense to try to figure out maybe moving forward some logistics and that sort of thing, if that works for everyone as well. So one thing that Sam and I did encounter when we were trying to do this doodle poll, everybody's busy. And especially once the closer we get to the holidays, I think it's going to get busier. I know that I have 1,000 things that are coming up that are going to take me out of state and whatnot. So things like that are going to be difficult. But does this group have an interest in trying to set a standing meeting, maybe monthly, bi-weekly, weekly? It doesn't matter to me. And if so, what are the best days? I mean, for me, it's always a Friday is usually the best, but everybody's different. So I'm all ears as to how to tackle that logistical issue.
Yeah, Mondays and Fridays tend to be the best most flexible for me, and I think monthly isn't meeting frequently enough if we expect to accomplish anything. I like the biweekly suggestion.
And Mondays is typically my heavier meeting day, but I might have an opening there. Fridays I keep open, free of meetings typically, just so I can get some work done. That being said, it is fully open from now to February. And if we're trying to plan something like this with a group that has a tight time period and trying to get something done, at least we know I'm fully open on Fridays, even if I was trying to avoid meetings on that day.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, I tend to agree, Eric, that the biweekly seems to make a lot of sense to me. And I think we currently have another meeting scheduled for next week, but that's in my mind that's okay. Then we could jump to biweekly after that. Does Fridays work for other people, or generally speaking? I know this is really hard to plan out
this Friday, or you mean a week from Friday?
So
when is the meeting next week? Sorry, you said something about next week, but I don't see that in my calendar.
Did we get something set up, Sam, for next week? I thought
so we didn't ever set anything official for next week. Okay. I just made another poll for that week just to get a gauge of everyone's availability. But if we wanted to schedule something for like next Friday, the 17th, we could, if we want to discuss that now.
To me, that makes sense, just because the following Friday, I think, is the day after Thanksgiving, and
yeah,
I don't know about anybody else, but I don't see anybody on that day. So I don't know if that makes sense for other people, but Friday the 17th to try to get the next meeting in and then start the bi-weekly from there.
Makes sense.
Okay. And maybe what we'll do, Sam, if we can send out just another poll for times and then set, okay, this time generally works the best for us moving forward, that would be great. I don't expect everybody to be on every meeting. It's probably going to be impossible to do that. Well, that's helpful. And then I think, I had it on my little notes here, in person or virtual. I think virtual probably works the best for everyone, but figured I'd just throw it out there. And then in terms of the agendas and whatnot, I know we're being live streamed now. I'm sure we have maybe nobody watching us, but the agenda and whatnot. This is, I guess, it's a task force. It's technically an official state entity. Do we need to publish the agendas ahead of time, Sam?
Officially, it's not like a committee meeting where it's required, but I think it just helps for the general audience to get a gauge of what the task force is going to be discussing for our meetings. So if they wanted to view anything. So yes, I will, and Len, I will talk to you behind the scenes about like, what's going to go into the agenda so I can like, post it ahead of time. And also, task force members, you will also get it before the meeting begins as well. Typically the day before.
I was going to say, if people have any specific ideas they want to include on the agenda, send them over to Sam and I, just so we have it. We're kind of steering the ship ourselves, so I'd love to, to have input from everybody just to make sure we're covering what we need to cover, and we're fully representative of the appointees that that were added here. So, yeah, and I think maybe for the next meeting, just to get it out there very briefly before everybody jumps off. It seems to me that if we can get one or two of the legislators, or all of them preferably, hear from them, and then potentially identify what is our end goal, what do we actually want to accomplish out of this. If we can, kind of come prepared to address that in a more specific way, I know I will, and go from there.
Right, and I'm not saying it's perfect in any way, and it's probably got some inaccuracies and items left out. But that study that I sent everybody, if everybody could please read that, and give me, or let's talk about it in general to see if this study is basically correct, and it might even serve as some kind of an outline for what we end up providing, because it does talk about benefits, and it goes specific on sites in Connecticut. So maybe it could be used as some type of an outline for our product that comes out of our task force. But it's certainly going to be good to talk to the legislature people to try to get more specific on, okay, what specifically do you want? Do you want us to talk about the economics of the existing dams out there, or do you want us to talk about, what does it take to get hydro to survive in Connecticut, and the basis for that, and so on, and any concerns that might be out there. So I just urge everybody to please check out my study, and let me know if there's any questions about that, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit more on the next meeting also. And if you have any questions about small hydro, I'm the man to talk to, because I've been doing it for 40 years, and I can tell a whole story about what the problems are out there. But the problem basically comes down to low rates that hydro is subject to, and you compare that. And I'm not bashing wind and solar, but wind and solar are going gung ho, and they're, from what I know, they're getting like 20 cents a kilowatt hour and this and that. And maybe we should all step back and say, hey, wait a minute, let's look at all these renewables and the environmental impacts of them, and make sure that we're treating them all equitably. That's all that we're looking for, is equitable treatment of the renewables in Connecticut.
All right.
Duncan, can I ask you a question? What do you view as small hydro? And I ask because I know that can be different to different people.
That's right. For this purpose, we have to draw a line somewhere, and we drew it at 3.5 megawatts. You'll see that in the study. It seems to be a good line, because the smaller projects are different than the bigger ones. The bigger ones, Lynn, you're probably able to bid into the ISO market. You're able to get contracts and so on, but small projects just can't do that. So if you read the study, you'll see that we put it at 3.5 megawatts.
Some of our facilities, yes, some of them no, but yeah, most of our big ones, yes, of course. But yeah, there's definitely a difference between something like our Chippewa station versus what Duncan's talking about.
Right. Well, I have your attention, Len. You've got a couple that will be decommissioned, right? Bantam, Robertsville. Why did those decommission? Yeah,
not decommissioned, just not operative right now.
Right, Robertsville and Bantam, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So if they had better rates, would they be online today?
Probably. It's I would have to defer to our commercial group, but yeah. So
It's a 600 kilowatt site and a 300 kilowatt site that are offline. Okay.
Just a logistical question. So these are being recorded and will live on YouTube Live in the Energy and Technology Committee area, or Sam, do you know where those are going to be?
Yes, so all recordings are saved onto the Energy and Technology YouTube page, and I can send out a link when I send out the poll for the next meeting. And the link will take you to the actual webpage where all E&T related content meetings are stored.
awesome.
Another bit of a housekeeping question. When you do send that poll for next Friday, can we assume that whatever time we agree on for next Friday would be the ongoing time for every other week?
That would be
Does that
my
make sense?
But I guess if we needed to be a little bit flexible, I certainly understand it's a week out as opposed to a month or two. But that would be my preference.
I think it would be a good gauge just to like, if I need to like send out an immediate Zoom meeting, that would be nice. But like you said, like things change, we can accommodate. We can accommodate if we need to.
Yeah, another idea is we could maybe send that poll for the 17th and the 1st. That way we can figure out when people are available for the 17th, and then for the 1st, it can be like the recurring time going forward.
No, that makes sense, Mariana.
Sounds good.
Okay. Anybody else? Commissioner, do we get you enough information to find the right staff person?
I think so. I should have chimed in earlier with your first question about what we're hoping to get out of the task force. But maybe I'll offer that now and try to close the loop. As an independent regulator, I'm not hoping to get anything out of the task force specifically. I try to view PURA's role as appropriately implementing policy that the legislature sets in the most cost-effective way possible. So, if the legislature decides that small hydro needs to be incentivized, like we would weigh in with ratepayer impacts, but to appropriately set expectations. PURA is not going to endorse. I've tried to lead PURA in a way that we wouldn't endorse a report or approach here per se. I would, try to advise the group on what the ratepayer impact would associated with any policies you want to put forward might be, without ascribing any good or bad to that. And that's how we've approached the last couple of sessions that I've been here in terms of advising the legislature on what the ratepayer impact might be of different, renewable energy policies and approaches. So, I think that's what I was intending to offer the group. Clearly PURA doesn't have any expertise on some of the issues that you've identified here. But I think if that's what the group was, if that aligns with what the group's expectations were, then that's enough for me to get an appropriate staff list. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, I would say that PURA is definitely a resource that has, a lot of expertise in certain areas, and I'm sure you probably don't want to weigh in on any of the recommendations or anything else, which makes a lot of sense. So, okay. Anyone else? If not, we're done 7 minutes early. Thanks, everyone, again for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thanks for organizing.
Thank you. See you next meeting.
Sure.